What does it mean to be fulfilled in life? When we think about this from a spiritual perspective, oftentimes people talk about finding fulfillment from within. And in principle, I agree with this. And I want to say that up front, because everything else that's going to follow is going to counteract that a little bit. But in principle, I agree that fulfillment should mostly come from within. Let me say it a little bit differently, because I actually take issue with that statement. What I believe is that when people are externally focused and all of their happiness and contentment is derived from the external world, there is a sort of emptiness inside that they are trying to fill. And in fact, I have seen great sources of suffering from those who could not be satiated. The hungry ghost phenomenon is its own sort of special hell. It really is. If you've ever known anybody that has had any sort of inclination, a vice, a hole inside that they couldn't fill, then it is actually a horrible existence for them. It's like constantly having a tapeworm or a parasite inside of you that no matter how much you eat, you're always hungry. And at some point, it exhausts the person. It ruins their finances. It ruins their relationships. They're not happy in life. It is actually a horrific affliction. And so I believe that a lot of these teachings are helping people like that. And even people who aren't as extreme. Those are like the extreme examples. If you've ever met anybody like this, then you will know how extreme it can get. And so for the normal person, if you just dial that back a little bit, where it's not a full-blown emptiness or a hungry ghost or a full-blown addiction, it's just this gnawing sense of dissatisfaction or discomfort that is only alleviated when they buy something, or when they watch a film or a movie, or they date somebody, or they engage in romantic liaisons, or whatever the flavor is for the person, whatever gives them the dopamine hit. And when they don't have that, they don't know how to be alone. They don't know how to be in silence, in presence. And that in of itself creates this need to escape the emptiness, to escape that internal feeling. So as a result, they fill their life with superficial external things. And then those external objects or experiences become the source of their happiness. So when you take everything away, it's like being in prison with nothing to do, and they feel incredibly bored, disconnected, dissatisfied, and uncomfortable. And so a lot of the teachings, I believe, are actually to help people shift that focus from the external world, giving them all of their happiness and helping them to connect with the internal them, helping to make peace with the silence, helping them to actually be present and to be comfortable no matter where they're at, to be content with whatever they have. But when you are working with people who are already demonstrating a high level of insight and the ability to be present and alone with themselves, this teaching falls a little bit short. Because not everybody is starting from the same position. And there's a whole group of people that are completely fine on their own and have been for a while. and generate feelings of contentment and satisfaction with just their own existence, their own lifestyle. And it's not tied to their wealth. It's not tied to their relationships. It's not tied to their material objects. And so as a result, when we just blanket statement that people should be content no matter what, and it should be generated from the inside only, I actually believe it overlooks another problem that we have. So when we look at the other side of the spectrum, what we find is that there's a group of people that are so content on their own that they don't need anything from the world. And these are people that we should have in the world. These are people that should be at the highest ranks of influence in society, in my opinion. But because they are content without material wealth or prestige or whatever the things are that usually motivate people, and of course now I'm talking about the very other side of the spectrum. So there's going to be people that are in between here and there, right? But it's easier to talk about the extremes so we can convey points. When people are actually content with having nothing and content with being on their own, content with not helping others, because that is its own pathology. If you know, you know. And I'm speaking from experience because I used to want to go and martyr myself and to help everybody and to save the world and the whole complex, that the savior complex, which you move past that at a certain point of your healing, and you start to appreciate that people are choosing their lessons for a reason. And for me, I needed to focus on myself versus focus on other people. And I needed to understand my lessons and my karmic patterns. And the way I was avoiding that was by trying to save everybody else. So for me, I've moved past that phase, but there are a lot of people that are still enmeshed there. And it's an important step of the journey. So I'm not trying to dissuade it or diminish it, because we do need people that help at certain points. As I like to say, we need shamans in the suburbs. And so recently, this is just a little side note, I was thinking about those that helped me on my awakening journey when I was unawake. And I've since moved past them. And I feel sometimes sad because it appears to me that they're still in the same circumstances and that they weren't necessarily happy in, that they felt stuck in. And karmically and personally, it seemed as though they wanted to live a different life, but they never broke away from their old life. And I thought to myself, maybe that's by design, because without them being stuck there, I would have not had the exposure to the teachings that they gave me at that time that actually tremendously helped me and others. It's a gift of theirs. And I was grateful that they did have that sacrifice and that they were helping people in the suburbs and the people who were not yet even awakened to the fact that there was a journey. They were like the first door greeter, and to help spark the awakening and catalyze a really big transformation. And I really, really appreciated that they were there. And so we need people at every position in society. But there is a dissatisfaction that comes when you are not fulfilled. And there's often a desire to move and to change and to materialize and to manifest and to make a difference. And so when people are completely content on their own, without the world, without needing to help people, without needing to work, without needing to engage with any lower sentient beings, those are probably the people that we need the most. To share their wisdom, to share their experience. And without that discontent, I'm not sure if they would show up, especially if they've moved beyond the needing to help people phase. And so as a result, some of these teachings of how we should live our lives as spiritual beings and ascended masters that are embodied, that are integrating or trying to be on our way to being an ascended master, or even a descended master. Because some people do rounds and hellscapes, and so they descend down for their lessons. And I believe that we need to rethink some of these protocols. This is my genuine, honest opinion. I actually believe that a lot of these teachings are outdated. And the fulfillment idea, like, what does it really mean? What does it actually mean? So I know what everybody teaches, myself included, about it. I know the general consensus about it, but let's pause for a moment and pivot away from that and ask ourselves if it's actually viable to exist in a material form and to be so detached and so uncaring about the external world that we just have our fire and our light and our contentment and our fulfillment inside of us, and we carry that around with us no matter what. Then what's the point of doing anything? What's the point of manifesting? What's the point of being here at this earth school? Especially if we are not called to participate. If we're not called to contribute. And if we're not called to help or to serve in any significant way. And without the dissatisfaction, without the discomfort, it doesn't even have to be full dissatisfaction, but without the lack of fulfillment, there is no striving for fulfillment. There is no desire to change anything. There is no contrast. So, what does it practically mean to be fulfilled? It means to be content. My mind keeps going to a warehouse, like an Amazon warehouse, where you put in an order and behind the scenes, the order is fulfilled and then it gets to you. And the chain and the cycle is complete. And ideally, it's a good match for you and you feel a sense of accomplishment. You feel like, okay, I received what I ordered. It was exactly what I needed or what I wanted. And my life has a little bit of extra glimmer in it, of satisfaction, of novelty, of whatever the desire was, right? So the process of fulfillment actually starts with a lack, right? The chain starts with a desire that actually is precipitated by the awareness that you do not have something that you want or you need. So as a result, you pursue it. Somebody helps you fulfill that, and then you obtain it. But when we break it all down, fulfillment really starts from lack, right? Fulfillment actually starts from a desire to change something. And there doesn't have to be negative feelings associated with it. It could just be a curiosity. It could be an impulse buy. But it's something inside of you that decides, my life would be a little more fill in the blank if I made this purchase. This is just one example, of course. And when the emptiness inside is only quelled by that purchase and a series of purchases, then we get back to the first part of this episode, where that is like slowly drowning and treading in materialism, hoping that you're going to somehow stay afloat. But actually there's something inside of you that needs to be healed, that you're trying to solve in the wrong way. And I believe that could be approached differently than the blanket teaching of, well, you should be happy and content on your own, because we live in this material existence. And the contrast experience and the desire for change is actually a beautiful experience. There's judgment that's laden on top of it that comes from these historic teachings that I believe that at some point we've outgrown. Perhaps not every human, right? But there's no shame in accumulating material things as if you are somehow empty inside because you like to buy whatever it is you like to buy. And because you receive some semblance of satisfaction from it, that doesn't mean that you are an empty person inside. There is a case study of humans where obviously there is an emptiness inside of them. And so as a result, there's a compulsive need to fill that with a variety of different substances or things or people or experiences. But we're not talking about that. What about desire is dirty? It is beautiful to be in a human form. It is beautiful to be able to build our lives, to construct worlds, to contribute to society. It is so fulfilling. Well, that's ironic. It is fulfilling to contribute at a higher level, and not from a base desire to save everybody, but actually to stand in one's own presence, edified as a complete human being, not perfect, but complete, happy on their own, with or without material possessions, with or without love or a partner, with or without success or accolades, and actually just be present with the gifts that they have. And from that position of contribution, to then give to the collective or to build something that inspires them with passion, conviction, creativity, joy, whatever it is, that is fulfilling. And there's no emptiness in there. It's completion. And it's beautiful, most raw essence. And so some of these distilled teachings from the ancient texts, I believe, are a little dated. I actually do. And these, quote, truisms that have been handed down to us, like the nature of desire being the source of suffering, I happen to disagree with. Because, as I mentioned, I believe it was in the last episode, to live without any desire is so banal. There's no creation. There's no emotion. It is the most tepid experience. There's no color. There's no sickness. There's no passion. There's no grief. It's not a life I want to live in. To be without desire means to be without joy. To be without substance, without life. And fulfillment has many different forms and many different seeds of origin positions, so to speak. So people can look for fulfillment when they are already complete inside, and it's a different relationship with the external world as a result, versus those that look for fulfillment with emptiness inside and needing to consume with the external world. Both examples are consumers, but the relationship between consumption with the conscious, whole, complete person is elevated. And so as a result, the idea of fulfillment is actually a lot more complex than I think that our current understandings give credit for.